Hello and welcome to the pod. I'm Nathan Fink.
I'm Jolyn Drennan, and this is New Hampshire Family Now,
a show about building family in the Granite State. Today on the podcast, 10-year-old singer-songwriter Lilly Netteshiem and her father Joel join the show to talk the song Believe, and later we welcome Professor of Psychology Dr. Loretta L.C. Brady, who discusses community change and what we can learn from Rupture and Repair. New Hampshire Family Now is brought to you by the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. Since 1962, the Charitable Foundation has worked hand in hand with generous and visionary citizens to maximize the power of giving and support, collaborate, and lead innovative initiatives. Initiatives like New Hampshire Tomorrow, which is focused on making sure children and families have access to education, healthcare, and career pathways to ensure every family member thrives. To learn more about New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and all their initiatives, go to www.nhcf.org. This podcast was also brought to you by Family Support New Hampshire. Family Support New Hampshire is NH's coalition of family resource centers and family strengthening programs that exist to ensure Granite State families have access to resources so both caregivers and children can succeed, because supported families are strong families. To find a family resource center near you, visit www.fsnh.org. Hey, it's Nathan, co-host of New Hampshire Family Now. I wanted to take a quick break from the show because it occurred to me the other day that I've never asked you to subscribe to this podcast. Subscribing is free, and when you do it, it helps our placement algorithms, making it that much easier for caregivers across New Hampshire to find valuable information and strategies for their families. Also, you'll be alerted when a new episode drops. And if you like the show, leaving a review helps us that much more. So go to wherever you get your podcast, type in New Hampshire Family Now, and as the kids say, smash that subscribe button. I say click it, because if you smash it, then you're going to need a new one. Thank you and enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today on the show, I have the great pleasure of welcoming 10-year-old singer-songwriter Lilly Netteshiem and her father Joel. Lilly, Joel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. We're excited to be here.
Yes.
Lilly, I have to say, when I first heard your song, Believe, I was awestruck by the sound, your musical talent, your voice, the songwriting. There are so many things that kind of inspired me from that. And I kept thinking, gosh, there's so many things in life to pick. And yet here you are working on music. How did you come to find music as something that you wanted to pursue?
Well, it chose me. I've always loved music, and I've always sung my dad's songs, and then I wrote my own, and I just kind of feel like music chose me in a way.
And how does it make you feel then to have, be, say, chosen by this medium? Like, how do you arrive at the creative space to kind of build out your own corner for song?
It's easy to me once I have a song idea, and then I just come to my dad, and then it just happens, like, really quick,
So how do you go about writing your songs? Where do you start?
I start with an idea from my life or something that happened in my life, and then I just start writing little stuff about it, and then I start singing it, and then I come to my dad who finds the chords on the guitar, and then I kind of sing it with him, and then we keep on working on it, and then we record it. It just comes easy to me for some reason. Like, as soon as I have that idea, it's just like, okay, we need to get to work right now.
It sounds like a very collaborative process where all of a sudden you have this little seed and then it goes back and then forth, then back and forth. Does it help you knowing that your dad can kind of give you ground for your own process where he's like, hey, let's try this. And you're like, well, let's try this.
Yeah, I trust my dad because he's been in music longer than I have. And he's the one who inspired me to be in music. So I trust his instincts, but I also go my own way.
And when you're writing a song or you finish a song and you hear your own song, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel proud of what I've done, what I've accomplished, and what I've been through. It helps me, it makes me stronger in a way, It makes me feel like I can do anything. What can I do now? I mean, without my dad, of course.
So I'm going to play a little section of your song, Believe, and then we're going to look at the lyrics.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm small, I'm little. Most people say you look like you're in person. Gray head, but I heard something deep inside that says you're tall, the tallest, fine. So I know who I am inside.
I'm small, I'm little. Most people say you look like you're in first grade, but then you hear something deep inside that tells you that you're taller than the tallest vine and you know who you are. So how does that make you feel when you hear that voice inside?
You know, I've always been like teased for being like the shortest in my class. And then I always hear that little voice that says, don't care about them. Just focus on what you can do, and that's enough. And you got this. And it always makes me push through the day, you know?
Have you noticed that voice is growing bigger and stronger in your life?
I've noticed that when I was like writing my album, that voice is like, you got this. You're being stronger than you've ever been. And I think that's great. You know, I think that
is great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Joel, now I know you're a musician as well, and your band Trapper's Cabin recently released a self-titled album, Trapper's Cabin. What does it mean to you to all of a sudden have your daughter follow in these footsteps in music?
It's exciting. It's cool. Very proud of her. And it's fun to watch her write her own things. She does a lot of it, and she's very headstrong. She acts like it's collaborative, but a lot of times she's the boss here. One time we were practicing, and I was trying to sing her song, and she stopped, and she said, "Dad, don't be singing my song. That's my song." So she's very headstrong, and she knows what she wants. But she writes the lyrics, she comes up with a melody, and then she comes to me, and I kind of strum along to see what the chords are, but she's definitely the boss.
I get it. My wife and I are currently trying to, help our kids, usher them into whatever they might like. And so, Joel, how do you figure out your line, where to step in, where to step back, and where to let it be messy and beautiful and arrive at whatever it's going to arrive at?
Right. Well, I definitely let her do her own thing, but I do have some knowledge of important things, elements of music, the fundamentals, practice. Let her create her own vision, but let her know what needs to happen if you really want to be successful in it. And so we practice. I let her do her thing. I steer her into certain ways where, hey, this might be a good point for the chorus to come in instead of, 12 verses in a row. So we help her kind of craft it the way it helps to make the song better at times. But she's definitely the boss. And I let her do her own thing because I want her to be her own. And you can tell just listening to it, it's definitely her own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Lily, knowing that your dad is there, has all that knowledge to help you maybe frame this song or participate in songwriting in a certain way, that's got to make you feel supported, that you can kind of play in the sphere, but yet you've got somebody that's there for you. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it sounds about right. It's just sometimes he's a little too pushy. But like he said, I'm headstrong. I know what I want. I'm like, Dad, let me do it. Let me do what I want. But I definitely let him help me when I'm confused or overwhelmed.
Now, Lily, this song is going to be participating in a campaign that is going to be spread throughout New England. And I have been playing the song for children here in New Hampshire. And some of the responses that I'm getting are that your music makes them feel safe. It makes them feel strong. It makes them feel heard. And they can't stop singing it
because I like the sound waves. It reminds me of family. It made me feel calm. It made me feel strong. It made me believe in myself.
I'm curious to know, how does that make you feel, knowing that there are kids out there hearing this music?
It's just, I've always been teased and stuff. Like, I wanted to help children who are going through the same thing as I am. And knowing that it makes them feel safe and strong, it just means everything to me. Because that's all I wanted to do, to make people happy and safe in my music. And now it's happening. Just makes me feel alive,
Lily, Joel, it was wonderful to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for allowing us to use your wonderful song, and we look forward to hearing more from you guys.
Thank you. We had a great time.
Yeah.
To download Lily's full album, go to nightowl.bandcamp.com. Again, that's nightowl.bandcamp.com.
I'm small, I'm little. Lots of people say you look like you're in first grade.
And when we come back, I welcome Dr. Loretta L.C. Brady. Don't go anywhere. Many thanks to New Hampshire's Office of Social and Emotional Wellness for sponsoring this podcast. Started within New Hampshire's Department of Education, the Office of Social and Emotional Wellness consolidates policy development and implements projects and programs that are focused on health and wellness with an emphasis on behavioral health of all students, youth, and families. To learn more about the Department of Education and its many programs and approaches, visit www.education.nh.gov. Today's show was also brought to you by Merrimack County Savings Bank, who proudly supports the mission and efforts of New Hampshire Children's Trust. Founded in 1867, Merrimack has served people, businesses, nonprofits, and municipalities in central and southern New Hampshire for over 155 years by treating everyone with care, respect, and compassion. Visit your local offices in Bow, Concord, Kentucky, Hooksett, and Nashua, or go to www.themerrimack.com. New Hampshire Children's Trust is excited to announce the launch of the 2022 I Am Prevention campaign. Throughout April, the Trust and its many family supporting partners are celebrating the many ways to strengthen families and help caregivers provide safe and nurturing environments for children. Connect with us for a list of trainings, webinars, panel discussions, and more, all designed to build family and community resilience in which children can thrive. Visit www.nhchildrenstrust.org to be prevention today. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today on the show, I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Loretta L.C. Brady, Professor of Psychology at St. Anselm College, Director at the Community Resilience and Social Equity Lab, speaker, author, parent, and the list goes on. Dr. Brady, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
First and foremost, congratulations on being named NH Business Review's Top 200. That's quite an honor.
Thank you. It was unexpected, but it's always a lovely company to be a part of. I've been a writer for New Hampshire Business Review back in 2012 or so. So it was lovely to be able to reconnect with folks in December when they celebrated.
Now, I'd love to know more about your work as director of the Community and Social Equity Lab and how that intersects with clinical psychology.
My lab is just my area of research, so I don't want to make it seem bigger than it is. But in that area of research, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. My area of focus has been trauma and resilience, and I've worked in that space helping organizations, first starting with patients and then helping organizations kind of do better by the clients that they were serving. I had a sabbatical 2019 to 2020, and I'd put some things in place before then. But during that sabbatical, I was able to officially launch the lab and really bring a coherence to the different kinds of work that I had been doing. As a clinician, we are trained to assess, to diagnose, to plan, to intervene. Those same skills are quite useful when it comes to working with organizations. And so really since 2011 or 12 in my consulting firm, I had been bringing those clinical skills forward and then bringing them to companies and supporting them. I had a Fulbright fellowship overseas where I brought that same kind of toolkit, but with a specific clinical lens of trauma to the country of Cyprus and worked with several of their agencies to improve the service delivery they were offering, particularly around addictive care. And so by the time of my sabbatical, it was really just time to bring all of that applied work and create a space where my students could more fully connect in with it. It's a little hard as a consultant to bring students into projects. So having that space at the college and the lab really allows students, and certainly our students at the College St. A's, but also other students, other graduate programs to plug in. And then together we create game and play-based interventions. In particular, we focus on vulnerable or high demand workforces. So we have a game called Bad Call that is being designed to support first responder and frontline workforces. We have another game, Rivers of Health, that's looking to educate our campus community and then beyond that around the intersection of social history, economic history, and health quality, both of a river ecology as well as of humans and human communities. So we try to create fun things in our lab. And then we also have a technical assistance bureau where we support organizations that are trying to do better by their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Sometimes we do that through assessment, do equity audits. Sometimes we do that through leadership development programming, or some combination of that where we're supporting the organization forward in empowering the staff they already have to do that work as well as it can be done.
Now, in the many wonderful things I've read about you and your many efforts, you self-describe as a community change agent. To your mind, what does positive community change look like, and how do we get there?
Ooh, like it's a little small question. And
you might want to break that one in two, by the way.
I guess when you see me describe myself as a community change agent, it's a recognition that, again, as a clinical psychologist, I have a specific kind of training, specific kind of skills that are developed. And one of those skills is listening, and another one is asking questions. And when you combine those two things together, you are often in a position where you are highlighting something that many people have recognized, but maybe not been able to give voice to, or have given voice to, but maybe not been allowed much airtime. And so that is not, you can maybe hear in my voice a little hesitation. It's not always a comfortable role to play, to be bringing forward questions that can be a little bit thorny or perceived as divisive, but it's an important skill to have in any team. And it's important, the question of how do you create positive community change? I think that's one way, is you make it comfortable for uncomfortable questions. You make the person who is needing to ask those things, not the target of ire or consternation, but you applaud those efforts of asking difficult questions, because no one can improve at an individual level, and this is true with patients, but certainly with organizations or families, unless we're able to challenge one another and ask difficult questions. And I've certainly been the recipient of difficult questions. It's not fun. It's not pleasant, but it's really the only way forward if improvement is going to be possible.
I'm curious to know what that change feels like, because I'm hearing that there's a level of safety in and around these difficult questions, or, that kind of environment you create as a safe and nurturing environment. But what is the resulting experience? Like, how does it manifest in daily life, say both practically and aspirationally for that community member?
Well, I have a book coming out this fall called Technology Touchpoints, and I get the touchpoints part from T. Barry Brazelton. And as the New Hampshire Children's Trust, I'm sure this is a name you'll know. He was a pediatrician. He started the Touchpoint Center in Boston. And he had a model that even infants, hours old, had all sorts of competence and capacity to communicate, and that even their skin tone changes were an effort to communicate something about how they were. He had a lot more in his theory, but 2 points that I want to kind of tie into your question: rupture and repair. And one point is that nobody develops in a straight line. Baby develops in a straight line. No human relationship develops in a straight line. There's going to be periods of supercharged growth. And then as a result of that supercharged growth in one area, we're going to see faltering, halting, pausing in other areas. And if you are a parent, you probably remember times of the routine was the routine and it was going great. And then all of a sudden it was falling apart and nothing had changed that you were aware of. But suddenly you get through those storms and your child has a whole new thing that they can do, whether that's talking or whether that's thinking differently about things, or, depending on what stage of life you're talking about. So your question of what does this feel like in an organization to achieve positive growth? Well, it feels a lot like that, which is fractured and disrupting and anxiety provoking and confusing, because the same thing that's true for human development is true for system development. We can see an improvement in performance and operations and effectiveness, and hear a lot of disgruntled people and a lot of things that don't work anymore. And, we used to be able to do it this way and now we can't. And that's just our condition. That's our condition as humans, I think, that when we are able to focus our energies and achieve a new destination, there's a cost to that, and especially before it becomes fluent, before we are really all pulling in the same direction and working together to achieve a common goal. There's a lot of bumps before that happens.
Feels like you should come to my house, because I have all of those levels conflicting right now.
Well, that would that would presume that it's going smoothly in my house, and it's not. So
I think that's the nature of the game, though, because like, as we're talking about this, and I know you're a parent, and thanks to, many wonderful guests like yourself, I've had the opportunity to better understand, my relationship to the community, that it matters. Those choices I make can actually build a more resilient and equitable environment. And as a parent too, I'm in this relationship with these young children who will grow, I hope, to embrace the same understanding. And so I want to know, what can I do from that parenting perspective in that relationship to help my children better their own, say, resilience factor? And, I heard you say, this fracture and repair. So I'm curious what that looks like in that, microcosm of that relationship.
I think that, again, I can't say that this functions 100% in my own family life experience, but both my husband and I do a great deal of service. We're both on more than one board, and we both have executive roles on some of those boards. So we do a lot of service in addition to being a member of a church family. And so we certainly model for our children what that looks like. And our children are going to have their own relationship to community. And what it looks like to serve community is going to mean very different things by generation, by, cohort even. And even in our household, we have children between the ages of 10 and 16, multiple genders, and it's different. But I think at the core is a willingness to be present and an attentiveness to others' needs, and not at the point of sacrificing your own, but an attunement to others. And I think if you're hearing that from your children, even if it's in the form of friend gossip, you have to give some credit to yourself, credit to your child, that they are a community member, right? That they are tuned in to something important happening in their social world. And the fact that they might care enough to bring that home in some way is the door to what we might, as adults who have agreed to be bored on Zoom endlessly, right? Like we agree to the parts of service that aren't always fun because we value what it means to serve. And our children are really good at helping us understand what's boring. So sometimes their acts of service are not going to take the shape that we recognize. But I think it's important to, honor what it is they do to serve. Being a good friend is service. Recognizing what a classroom teacher is out of and saying, hey, can we bring an extra box of tissues? Like, that's service. And it's maybe not the shape that ours looks like, but it is. And then sometimes just not being the squeaky wheel, like when you recognize people are overwhelmed right now and I can probably figure this out at home or on my own. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And, sometimes that is an act of service, and we have to make the space for that. I think regarding kind of rupture and repair, a piece that I don't always get right, but I try really hard to remember, is that the repair is what matters. That whatever that rupture was, whatever that break might have been, it's always more important what the repair is, and that it has an opportunity to happen. With our kiddos, they may not want to do what we do or how we do it. And there might be times in their lives and in our family life where they are not doing it at all. And I think, we make that space for them to have their own rupture and repair cycle around their relationships, and try to be that sounding board that can let them ask those tough questions that maybe they're not voicing in those other spaces, so that they have a better capacity to get repair or bring repair to whatever that situation might be.
Just so I'm clear, you said you wouldn't come to my house, right?
This might be as close as it gets.
Now, you did mention your book, Technology Touchpoints, Parenting in the Digital Dystopia, where you help us understand the complex systematic challenges and findings related to technology and human development. When considering that conundrum, that is technology in our child's development, what should guide us in our thought process around how we approach it?
Yeah, well, the book will walk readers through a whole set of different theories, and where I start and where I ended up is not what I thought would be the story. But I would say that something that's really emphasized in the work and what I try to do in my own thinking around this is that, humans create. So technology is shaped by us and technology is shaping us. And it's a bi-directional shaping. And that is not avoidable. And whether or not that's fortunate or not, I don't even want to say unfortunately necessarily. I just think it's unavoidable. Our families and our children have technology relationships. There's just no way around that. So to think that it's as simple as parental controls, or maybe not as simple as lobbying for more parental controls, right? Ultimately, it's really about our social value system and a recognition that the argument we're having around the dinner table is not really about our family. It's about our economy, if we're being honest.
Right.
And when we can recognize that that argument is about our economy and not really about our family, I think it helps us pull back some of that venom that might otherwise be present around a particular device, around a particular child's behavior pattern, or, I think we as parents, and understandably, personalize our battles with technology. And then that, can have a souring relationship with our children, or at least make us fear that that is what will occur. And I think when we realize that this is not about our families, we are simply market segments in the big cog that is technology, it can maybe give us a wider perspective and make some of the decisions that we do need to make individually within our households maybe easier to communicate or easier to come to ourselves. I write for a world that isn't always mine, but
yeah. I do have a personal interest in storytelling, and everything that we're talking about here makes me consider really kind of the way we hear ourselves, like the discussions we're having and the way we listen and are present for those, and really the stories we tell ourselves around it, or our community lore, and why it matters. And I'm curious to know, how does inclusive storytelling and representation fit into this idea of resilience and equitable community?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is part of the genesis of the lab's work. It's a recognition that, social equity, community resilience are tied together. The greater our social equity, the more resilient our communities are. The deeper our community resilience, the more likely we are to have equitable outcomes. And these are intimately tied together. And in the question of storytelling and representation and, what are inclusive stories? What's the power of an inclusive story? It comes, I think, in two ways. So one is in a protective way. We have a concept in psychology, protective identity development. And so that is this idea that if I'm a member of a community that's not well represented or not positively represented, and I'm given access to stories that show me members of my community that are agentic, they're able to accomplish things, and they are successful, and they are able to be persevering, and that they name the barriers that are being persevered through. That story has a protective factor for me. It protects what might otherwise be not named harms that I'm experiencing by virtue of my story being absent, or by virtue of the story about me and my community being negative. A positive story protects me from those arrows by giving me a little mental model of, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not imagining this, set of barriers. Other people have experienced these things too, and they've been the heroes of their story. I can hold on to that, right? And it gives me that counter to whatever the dominant narrative might be about my community. And that's the protective identity development component. And then there's the promotive identity development component, which is for any community to hear stories that represent different communities than their own, but that are, again, demonstrating kind of how you get over hurdles. You benefit from those stories by having, I can learn more about this community. I can learn more about someone with this background. I can learn more about this type of hardship. And so that promotes awareness, and it promotes an acceptance and a curiosity that might otherwise be absent without those stories. So why did I write a book? Why did I take time over my sabbatical to get my lab running in a way that would allow students to plug into the work? Really, it's in the service of protective and promotive identity development. When we create a game, we are creating a storytelling space, and those stories that are told in that game experience can have a protective and promotive value for an individual player, and also for groups of workers, for team members working together.
Yeah. Dr. Brady, it has been so wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the pod, and please come back when you get a chance.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, and for the record, my wife and I live in Durham, just in case.
Fair enough.
Many thanks to the Samuel P. Hunt Foundation for sponsoring this podcast. Established in 1951, Samuel P. Hunt Foundation is a Manchester-based, independent nonprofit that provides grants primarily for the arts, children and youth services, faith-based organizations, educational institutions, healthcare, and human services. New Hampshire Family Now is listed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Listen wherever you get your podcasts or ask your smart speaker to play New Hampshire Family Now.